There has been this trend, an interesting trend between parents and children that has been happening over the last decade or so. And this is where children actually refer to their parents by their first name. Have you heard of this? Where you will ask a child, hey, what's your mom's name? Or who is that? And they'll say, oh, that's Mary, or that's Sandy, or that's Phil. Instead of saying, oh, that's my mom, or that's my dad. Now, is there any problem with that? Not really. I mean, the way that you refer, there are some arguments for and against it. One argument against it is that some people believe that in order for a child to grow up in a safe environment, they need to know that somebody's in charge. And by disconnecting the roles of the individuals in the household, by equalizing them by just using names, it doesn't really give them clear indication of who's in charge, like a mom or a dad. Whether that's true or not, I don't know. Do I agree with that? I don't know. These are basically labels that we've placed on individuals in a household. So mom and dad have specific roles and their specific things. Some parents have actually believed that a parent, the indication of being called a mom or a dad is actually something they don't want to associate, they don't want to identify with. So being a dad and having a dad body, or being a mom, usually a mom is different. She's not young and vivacious like a single adult is. Okay, so they're just differing paths on being called a mom and a dad, and different perceptions about those things. And some parents buy into that and they don't want to do that. And so they prefer to have their children call them by their first name. So again, there's this whole dynamic of different ways that people approach our relationships with their children. What it does, though, is bring in this question about whether or not a parent should be a friend or whether they should be a parent to their child. The reality is that children need a parent. They absolutely need a parent. And what happens over time is that the relationship evolves into the parent becoming a friend. Let me give you an example of this. As a child is 0 to 5, the child is dependent on the parent for everything. At 5, the child starts to create this independence from the parent and actually begins to push them away. And as a teenager, they're absolutely trying to establish their own identity. During that process, the parent role changes for everything, responsible for everything, and then less responsible for everything as the child learns independence. And then as the child becomes a teenager, even less responsible, and that's in order to help the child become independent. And then eventually the child becomes a young adult, where the child should be at that time independent. And the role of parent changes from 100% to actually less and less and less over time. So should a parent be a friend to their child or be a parent? The reality is that it naturally evolves that way. You actually, as your child grow, will become more of a friend or a mentor or a counselor or a guidance for them, but it's more as a friend than it is as a 100% parent, where you're responsible 100% for everything that happens in your child's life. So the answer is you're both, but you have to understand when you are going to be one and when you're evolving into the other, right? Depending on the age and developmental stage of your child, should you be there, or there, that's going to depend on you and how much independence you're going to allow your child and freedom for them to explore their own independence and their own individuality as they grow. So keep in mind that your role as a parent is to allow this process to unfold, and that your role as a parent will evolve from 100% parent to eventually more of a friend or a help or someone to give guidance and counsel to. Okay, that is the gamut of growth, healthy growth. And if you're able to do that, your children will transition into adulthood and be independent, successful, and be able to do things on their own. So again, you determine friend or parent. Now, that's where some of the issues do come in, is that sometimes a parent will extend this role into the teenage years, where the parent is trying to be in control of everything all the time. And that's where you start to run into some problems, because as your child is trying to develop independence and push away, the parent is constantly on top of them, not allowing that to happen, and then friction ensues, and there's just a lot of conflict and disagreements and problems. So learning how to do that. Now, if your child is a teenager and is not mature enough to make decisions on their own, then it's time to start teaching them skills that will lead them towards making better decisions. There are skills on the Smarter Parenting website to help you with that. Some of those include, if they are teenagers, the problem-solving skill, helping them make decisions and evaluate what their options are and finding out what's best to do for them. So, again, within that gamut, parents, just understand your role is going to change over time and be aware that that's a necessary thing in order for your child to be successful. Right, that's it for me. Don't forget to subscribe and visit the Smarter Parenting website for more help and tips for parents. And visit us again next week as we address another question that comes from you on the audience. Feel free to also leave a comment or send us your questions, and we will gladly answer them.